Alright, with another small detail taken care of, let's go ahead and start working on the sides now. So, the windows have to be removed, obviously. There's only one actual window we can save that, well actually two, on this car body itself that we can save, and it is the window on, let me see, it's the window on this end here. This is going to stay, because on this side we're going to have the three windows. And then on the opposite side here, the only window that we're actually going to be able to save is this corner window, but we're going to have to shrink it. The window here represents the bathroom window, which is too large for this particular prototype, so we're going to have to shrink this down. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this window trim first, actually on all these windows, and then we'll come back and plate this up with a little bit of a strip styrene to kind of redo this window, to basically shrink it down a little bit so it's a little bit smaller. But every other window is going to get basically either cut out or plated over. So let's go ahead and get started with this. Best tool to use on this is a chisel blade. Again, you want to try to be conscious of your surroundings. Obviously you don't want to damage certain details. Unfortunately, this car has some really nice side panel detail like this, as you can see. This is going to get lost. Keep that in mind. There's nothing you can do to save this at this point. These sides are going to get completely redone. They're going to get new pieces grafted in, and in the end, it's all going to get sanded down with filled in and everything, so you're never going to see this. We might be able to restore these later, we'll see. But anyway, with these windows, what you're going to do is you're going to take all the window trim off first. This is going to be the first thing you do, okay? So you just take little bits off at a time. As you can see, it comes off very, very quickly, so you kind of got to be prepared for it. I'm just going to very, very carefully take it down flush with the side. On this side here, what we're going to do is go ahead and cut this little fuel filler out as well. I just went ahead and decided to go ahead and shave these stock weld beads off as well. I'll just go ahead and get rid of them, get them out of the way. They're going to get obliterated in a little while anyway, so we're just going to go ahead and get rid of them. But I'm just going to cut this down. But you can see how easy this is once you use like the right tool. Basically, this chisel blade really makes short work of this kind of detail work, and again, it just really cuts right through these window frames. I'm really actually pretty pleased with the plastic on these Walthers cars. These are really easy to take off now. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty soft plastic. One more window to remove, and it's this one in the corner. Okay, so with that done, now it's time to fill in the windows. I'm using some 020-inch styrene sheet that I've cut to size. Basically, with a piece like this, you want to basically estimate the size of the window, take a piece of styrene, and then just basically fit it over the window frame, figure out how much material you need to take off, and then start trimming it until it fits into the space like this. So I've cut out some pieces like this piece right here that are going to go in these windows. We've got 5 windows to fill on the sides, and we're going to go ahead and do that now. Alright, so the majority of the windows are plated up at this point. We're pretty much ready to go on to the next step. What we're going to end up doing with these later on is just taking these down with a little bit more sandpaper just to make sure they're nice and smooth and we have a nice smooth transition. Then what I'll do is I'll put putty on these seams, fill them in, sand them down some more. We'll spray some test primer on the area to make sure everything's filled in, and then we'll sand and fill some more if need be. So right now we have the windows masked off for the most part. Like I said, this window we're going to have to modify a little bit and fill it in a bit, but we'll save that for later. Right now we're going to go ahead and get ready to start cutting some new windows in. So we're going to start with this side. Obviously this side has the 3 windows as shown in the photos. Now I actually have a car I can show you here for the reference here. This is an N-scale brass car made by Overland Models. Really nice model, as you can see. This is the C27A car, and you can see what we got to do here. We're looking at the side. Same side on this N-scale car is the side, pretty much the same side on this car as well, so you can see we got to turn this into this at the bottom. So we're going to have to do the 3 windows, so obviously this is going to be the hardest part. So how are we going to do this? Well, what we're going to do is basically cut out a small section of the plastic and then basically graft in a new section that I've cut from styrene to represent the new windows. Now, if you're going to do this kind of work, what you need to basically do is make sure you get all of your measurements right, figure out basically exactly where the windows are going to be. That way you can properly estimate how much you need to cut out, and you know exactly where the windows are going to be, obviously, because you've got to work around that. You know, you want to be as precise as possible and not, you know, screw something up or, you know, potentially damage the model. And, you know, obviously if you start cutting into this, it's hard to fix that. and redo it, especially, you know, if you do screw up window positions, then you got to fill them back in and then start all over again, and then you're kind of basically at that point jeopardizing the structural integrity of the entire piece. So, you know, you obviously want to be as accurate as possible. I've done a lot of research on this, and I've obviously done this car a couple times before to kind of experiment with this. So what I'm going to do is cut out a small section, and then we'll fill it in with a bit of styrene. So what I've done here is I've taken some 30-inch styrene, and I've basically taken a pattern, scaled this down to HO scale, looking at prototype photos, and basically figured out the size of the windows, cut them out, and made this little piece. So this is going to be the insert that's going to go in the side of this car. So essentially what it's going to be, we're going to graft this piece into the side, so we will have our 3 windows like this. This is essentially what this is going to look like. So obviously easier said than done, but this is the piece I'll be using. On this side here, I've also cut a small window section to basically do this window here, because we obviously got to cut a window, so it'll just be a single window piece like this, and I'll show you guys how to. So the first step here is to basically go ahead and start marking some areas where we need to drill out the holes. I know roughly where the windows have to be, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make pilot holes in the side of the car, particularly on this side, on the ends. Since we can't get a cutting tool here, primarily I'm going to be using a cutting tool to guide myself in. So what I'm going to do is make holes on the ends with a drill, that way we can cut around those later. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting these holes in, and you just want to do this very, very carefully, using a relatively large drill bit here. So you just kind of start in the corner, and then just carefully start drilling into the plastic like this. So just take your time with this. There's that. And then one more here. I'll zoom in on this last one. There we go. You guys can see what I did. We're going to repeat this process on this side now. Right in between the panels here. About right, say right there. Start it off slowly. Guide it in. Bottom. A little farther down. So obviously with a motorized tool like this, you just want to be very, very careful. You don't want to cut in anything else. We're just going to start on the end like this, start sawing into the car body. Just straight across. Try to keep it as even as possible. First cut. And there's the second cut. So as you just saw there, that's pretty easy. That was literally a couple minutes of drilling and then cutting, just to basically get the general shape cut into the sides here. Now what we can do, since we drilled these holes, this marks where we need the end cuts need to be made. So what you can do then is take an X-Acto blade and then just start sawing away at the material, basically to take this middle piece out. All this material has to get removed, so you can just carefully start guiding this out. After a little bit of trimming with my X-Acto knife, I took a coarse sanding stick, this guy here, and just kind of went in, cleaned up the edges a little bit, and essentially then what I did was I took my side piece, made sure that it fit in this space, just like this. So as you can see, it's pretty much a perfect fit. Now what we got to do, with this hole completely filled in, we need to go ahead and start putting some material on the back of this. That way it'll be able to support the new piece. Obviously we can't just take this, new piece, fit it in there and glue it. It won't be able to stick. If I grab the sides, it'll just fall right through. So we need to have some backing material that we can actually set it on top of, and it'll be supported completely. And then we'll just have to build it up to the height of this thickness of plastic, and then we'll just basically put the piece on top of that is essentially what I'm going to do. I'm also going to repeat that step for this side as well. So the whole process is going to basically be done with, again, some 30-inch styrene. It's a bit thicker than 020, so it has a little bit a little bit more thickness, is a little bit more sturdy. It does still have some flexibility, but it's just a little bit more solid than the 020. So I'm going to be using this to backfill these pieces in. Also, on this corner here, I've gone ahead and cut out the single window that's going to be going on this side here. I'm going to save this for tomorrow. I won't bother with this side yet. I'm just going to worry about working on this side for the video today. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'll just start cutting out small sections, basically, strips, and then I'll start backfilling this area, and I'm going to basically be working around this panel, so all these little strips are going to be hidden behind the areas that you can't see behind these. Okay, so as you guys can see my process here, I've basically put in the backfill material made from styrene. I used the 30-inch first, and then I just kind of basically built up the layers of styrene to match the width of the stock plastic material on the Walther's car. So with the material built up with various gauges of styrene, I can basically now take this window fillet and stick it right in, and it's completely flush with the side now. Check that out. It's pretty sweet, huh? Look at that. So obviously, like with this, that's basically how you do this. As you can see, it's actually pretty easy. It's not that hard. It does take a little bit of guesswork. Obviously, with something like this, you do have to, like I said, try to get as accurate as possible with the placement of these windows. In this case, what I did, like I said, I've done this before, but I just basically used prototype reference to get the actual position of these windows just right. If you're nervous and you're just starting off and you don't want to make any wrong cuts or anything like that, what you can do is get the size of the model, basically draw it out on a piece of paper, and then scale all this down, and then sketch out on a piece of paper where the windows go. I did that originally when I first did this kind of project a long time ago. I just wrote it all on paper and then just basically planned it out, and that's how I was able to get the actual sizes, which I have written down. That way I knew ahead of time what the sizes were for these windows and what the position was. That's how I basically did this. So anyway, enough chit chat there. This is pretty much ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and finish sanding this piece down, get it cleaned up a little bit, and I'll be able to go ahead and install it on the side. And then the next step will be to, of course, do it on this side. I won't show this side, however. I'll just go ahead and just do it. This first side here, the major side, was the big one I wanted to show you guys, so you guys get the basic idea of how I'm doing this. So we'll go ahead and keep moving here, and in the next clip you guys will get to see the window sides installed. So quick clip here, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the process I'm going to use to clean up this part real quick. I just want to basically take some of the material off, that way it's just a little bit lower in the car body. It is raised a little bit. It's pretty flush to the side, but I just want to do some final sanding. And again, I just want to kind of take off some of these cut lines and stuff like that. So this is the final sanding process. I have a sheet of 400 grit sandpaper here. This stuff is really good for taking down good bits of styrene pretty quickly. I like to wet sand these parts, that way I don't aggressively bite into everything too fast. So I just wet sand the piece like this, and I'm just going to try to kind of carefully guide it across. Now, be very careful when you do this kind of sanding, because with a part like this, you'll take this material down real fast and you won't even know it. It's very important to just take a little bit off at a time. It's kind of hard. I can't really get a good angle at it, so I'm going to move the camera here. That way I can actually get in here and put some pressure on this part. Once I take the majority of this material down though, then what I'll do is I'll repeat the process, only on a finer piece of paper, this 2000 grit, to do the final sanding and to smooth everything out, take off all the rough surface of the sanded part. So that'll be the next step here, but I'm just going to go ahead and finish sanding this, and I'll show you guys the installation next.